Alright, hello and welcome. So, now that the Piranha Prime has gotten the spotlight that it deserves, let's talk about the rest of this Limbo Prime access, that being Limbo Prime himself, the Destreza Prime, and of course the Piranha Prime is in here as well, but that will be relegated to its own video, obviously, that has already come out. With that, the reason the Destreza is not getting its own Why Would You Use is because I fail to find any real significant reason to use this weapon, besides, hey, it's fancy though. Look how, isn't it nice? Isn't it so beautiful? And if that is enough reason for you to use this weapon, it functions, it is serviceable, but that doesn't really cut it for a Why Would You Use. It's fine. It exists. The main problem with this weapon is that it's so motherfucking short that you're gonna have to get inside the same goddamn pants your enemy is wearing in order to hit them, and that's just not conducive with how we play Warframe. Like, I need to have a melee weapon where I swing it, and everyone in my direct vicinity is now dead, or at least about to be dead, which you can get from many, many Zaws. Any polearm Zaw that is built with half of a brain cell can do that to a room. You've got, like, obviously the heavy blade Zaws. You've got, like, just regular polearms, like the Guandao, which is a lower MR, is incredible for this type of thing. Obviously the Atarax, if you have access to Maiming Strike. The list goes on of these incredible melee weapons that you will have access to before this weapon, and that's not even to count weapons that you'll have access to after this, like Galatine Prime, and shit like that. So this thing just doesn't really have a home unless you want to be the fancy stabby man. And I mean, some people are going to want to be the fancy stabby man, but that's just not enough for me, because I even think that the Zaw repair that you can build is better than this, just because, like, it has innate viral damage. There are many ways to build it where you can take it way more advantage of condition overload. It's just a million different things that, like, come together to make Destreza Prime just not very worth it in the end. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have Limbo Prime himself. So Limbo Prime has a weird issue in that, well, A, he looks great. He looks absolutely goddamn phenomenal. I'm sure a few people have probably noticed, hey, why does your Limbo Prime just look like a gender-bent version of the Mesa Deluxe skin? And don't shush, he looks great. He looks fantastic. It's wonderful. But his unique problem is that he doesn't need any forma. Like, there's no, I can't bring myself to put a forma in him, because he just doesn't fucking need it. Like, there's no real advantage to be gained from forming him. Like, with just this build, anything that's not Corpus are being handled incredibly efficiently, because you've just got, like, the map-wide lockdown. Natural talent makes your 2 less annoying to use, and you just kind of have everything that you want. And for me personally, I always want a movement mod, so there's the potential that I could put one forma in to use, like, Firewalker or Lightning Dash, because those are fancy, but that's like a minor thing overall. And, like, this build can be adapted to be good against the Corpus faction too, because Corpus just want you to have less range, so instead of using Overextended, you can just throw, like, Constitution in here. Great, phenomenal. And, like, even if you want to modify your range further, you could, instead of using Augur Message, use Augur Reach to have, like, 190. There's a lot of variability that you get in here that you don't normally really get from a Warframe that has no forma in it. But the polarities line up in such a way where all of, like, the really, really expensive mods have a polarity. Like Prime Continuity, which you're always using, you have the V. Quick Thinking or Narrow-Minded, if you really want to go super high duration, you have the D polarity for that. And since you're probably going to want to use Prime Flow, you have the dash polarity for that. Worst case scenario, you throw Constitution into this slot and you get some duration from there. Like, there's a lot of different ways to build this to be good for each given scenario. And while the only thing that you could possibly be lacking is if you are using, like, the Rift Torrent augment, but the Rift Torrent build on Limbo is not necessary for any content. Your weapons already should be doing enough damage that you don't need a damage boost. So it ends up that that build is just kind of meaningless whenever you use it, and while you could forma for it, there's just no real purpose to doing so. So Limbo is kind of just fresh out the box, everything you would need him to be. Which, I mean, hey, that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying. So yeah, that's like Limbo, that's the Destreza. Obviously the Piranha Prime has its own dedicated video because it is unique enough and good enough in a way that it gets a why would you use. But let's show off all this stuff in conjunction because, like, hey, Limbo is still a fun Warframe. I think it's really unfortunate that they cut his status duration, or stasis duration rather, in half. But it just makes you, like, be forced to build more duration, which I guess is fine. And Limbo functions as well as he always did. Like, you can use his guns while you're in the rift now, so you stop time and then open the rift up. And now you can shoot dudes, so, like, that's cool. That's, like, pretty rad, right? Like, that's pretty neato. And then we're using the piranha effect here, like, it's good. And, like, this is much less annoying to teammates now. Like, you have all that business. And enemies are at your mercy, as it were. But yeah, like, just make sure you're keeping your time stopped. That's all you really gotta do here. Like, these enemies, like, you can just play with your food, essentially, right? Like, the only thing that could possibly mess with a Limbo is a nullifier, and that's why you do, like, a lower range build, so it's a little bit more focused on what you're hitting, and you can pay more attention to when you need to take care of nullifiers, like dodging into their bubble and just taking them out. And, you know, like, it's just kind of whatever. And, like, worst case scenario, if you have, like, one problem enemy, like, let's say this guy, bloop, you just bring that one into the rifts, and what are they gonna do? Nothing. Like, Limbo can just play with enemies. That's his shtick, as it were. That's the whole deal. So, yeah. That's kind of the Limbo Prime access. I was really, really surprised that Limbo didn't need, like, 3 Forma. But, yeah. And also, it's unfortunate that the Destreza is as short as it is, because I'd really love some, like, really far forward stabs, because those aren't even particularly useful if I had, like, let's say, like, a 7-meter forward stab and, like, no left to right range. That would be kind of cool to have, but the Destreza is just not that. Anyway, that has been today's video. I will see you guys tomorrow. Later, everybody.